Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by Jay Bowman. I thought it would be interesting to do another video on one of my favourite synths, which is the Kodamo EssenceFM, and explore a couple of things I've been messing with recently, one of which is using more operators in my sounds to try and get a more complex sound. So I'm going to try and patch a 6 operator sound and see how that works. And then another thing I've been doing recently is exploring the looping envelopes to try and make interesting sounds for drones. And I've also recently improved the audio setup in my studio, so hopefully my voice will sound a bit clearer in this video than it has in previous videos. I should say I've got a couple of guinea pigs in this room with me at the moment, so if you hear any background noise, I'm afraid there's nothing much I can do about that. It's just my furry friends. They're both sleeping quite peacefully at the moment, so hopefully there won't be too much disturbance. So let's get started. We're going to patch from scratch, so I'm just going to turn on the EssenceFM. And this is the screen that you get when you load up. Now I'm going to work down from performance mode, because I have a sequence that I've already programmed on my MPC Live 2, and so I know the notes that are going to be put in. It's going to be a 2-part sequence, and I'm just going to go to performance mode, check I'm on a fresh performance, which I am. Let's push performance again, and by default part 1 is set to MIDI channel 1, part 2 is set to MIDI channel 2. I'll start with part 1, so I'm going to mute channel 2 for now. So just clicking on that speaker icon there mutes part 1. So I'm going to start the sequence playing, and so we're in performance mode now. If I push, if I click on here, so that's part 1. And I want to get to an initialized patch, so I've gone to bank X because I know there's some blank patches here. I'll go to patch 2 in bank X. So now I'm in the patch layer. What I want to do is assign an initialized voice to this patch. So again, I click on edit, and now this has taken me down to voice mode essentially. So if I go to bank X and choose a blank voice, then I click on edit, and now I'm in an initialized voice. So here you can see 6 operators, obviously. Operator 1 is the only operator we're hearing at the moment. Operator 3 is a carrier, and 6, 4, 5 and 2 are modulators feeding into operator 3. Now because operator 3 is muted, that means you don't hear that carrier, which is operator 3, or any of the modulators which are feeding into it. So operator 1 is the only operator we're hearing at the moment, and it has the default settings, so it's on a standard sine wave. It has a kind of organ envelope here. It has velocity sensitivity at 127, but otherwise no modulation set up, and no pitch modulation either. So let's start by adding an operator to modulate operator 1, and the way you do that is by clicking and dragging quite easily. So there you'll see we've got operator 5 is now modulating operator 1. Now the first thing I want to do is probably reduce the volume of operator 5 a little bit there. So let's put it to halfway, it'll be 64, 63. Okay, so I'm going to change the envelope here for operator 5. So on the envelope screen, if you click anywhere other than a segment, you'll get the option to change from exponential curves to linear curves. So now you'll see when I click and drag the various segments of the envelope, it's a linear curve. as opposed to a exponential curve. So you can hear the difference probably. So I'm going to use a few more segments to try and make a kind of curved sound. So, oh, and the other thing I want to do is take off sustain in this portion, in this envelope, because I want the sound to continue changing through the whole envelope section. So if I click on segment 2, which is where the sustain portion is now, and click on sustain, then it's gone. You could set sustain for any of the other segments, but as I say, I don't want any sustain. So to add segments, you click on the plus button. So now I've got 6 segments essentially, 0 to 5. So you can either click and drag the segments or use the knobs. Okay. So that's the envelope for operator 5. So here we have a organ envelope on operator 1, and again, as it's a kind of more of a pad sound, I want to change that. So I'll leave it on exponential. Let's take off the sustain. Okay, so we need to make it extend for longer. So now you can use your finger and your ear to try and get the envelope to how you want it. Okay, so we've got now essentially quite a long release, so let's try and cut that down a little bit. Okay, so we've got 2 operator kind of pad sound. As you'll notice, I'm just using the default sine waves. I've not used bit reduced sine waves to get any more grit or anything into the sound. And in the audio options, I haven't disabled waveform interpolation, so this sound is quite smooth or high resolution. Now, one thing I learned from going through Per Villes' patches recently, and you can see my previous video on that, is he uses detune quite frequently to add grit and interest to his sounds. So if I add a bit of detune there, hopefully you can hear that adds a bit of interest. So if I take the detune off, hopefully you can hear that. It's adding a bit of bit more movement to the sound. Okay, let's just add a little bit more to these so we've got 2 operators. Let's add a third operator. So I clicked and dragged operator 4, so it's on top of operator 1 and released it. So now operators 5 and 4 are both modulating operator 1. Operator 4 has the default settings that we've been through before. So what I can do is just copy and paste from operator 5 onto operator 4, and now operator 4 has copied all of the settings that operator 5 had. So far all 3 operators in this sound have the same ratio, 1:1. But what we can do now we've got 3 operators or 2 modulators both modulating the carrier is we can use a different ratio for this particular so I'm going to reduce the volume of this operator 4, which is at half ratio. So it's adding a bit of bass or a lower tone to the sound. Now I'm not sure why there's a note that's obviously a lot louder than the others, so I'm going to reduce the velocity sensitivity a bit to try and reducing the velocity sensitivity of the carrier, which will reduce the kind of volume of the patch. Okay. So if I mute operator 4, let's add a 4th operator. So if I click and drag operator 6 onto operator 5, I'll copy and paste the settings into 6. Now, what I want to do is use operator 6 to modulate both operator 5 and operator 4. Now, you can do this, it's just I find it a little bit tricky to work out exactly what I'm doing. There you see it. By holding operator 6 and then pressing operator 4, I was able to link them, but I just find it a bit tricky to do that consistently for some reason, but it does work. Sometimes just takes a few tries. So now we have operator 6 modulating 5 and 4, which are modulating 1. If I adjust the ratio here for operator 6, you can hear what difference that makes. Let's reduce the volume. Okay, so we've got 4 operator sound now. Let's go into the LFO for the voice. each operator has a mod section which will allow you to use the LFO to modulate the volume, or the frequency, or both. So what you can do is just go into each operator and dial in an amount of LFO modulation for the amplitude and the frequency. Of course, we're using noise as the waveform for the LFO. What I'll do though instead is use the mod matrix, and what I will do is use the envelope of operator 5. So operator 5 volume envelope, and let's go to operator 1, and there you see we're using it to modulate the amplitude modulation. So rather than being a fixed value, which it would be if we went into the mod section for that operator, we're using the envelope here of one of the operators. It doesn't have to be an operator that you can hear. You can use one of, I could use 3 or 2. I could use that envelope if I wanted, but I would use operator 5 envelope. Now to reduce how extreme the effect is, I'll reduce the ratio here. The other operators, so rather than having to set it up each time completely, I can just copy that mod slot, paste it here, change the destination so it's operator 4 AM, and I'll do the same for 5 and 6. Sounds good if I put it on the FM for operator 5. Okay, so we've still got 2 operators left to play with. So I could either add them onto this stack, or I could create a separate stack to the side. So maybe doing that and adding a bit of noise that way as well might be the best way to go. So if I copy operator 5 to number 3, now we've got kind of a pitch stack and a more of a noise stack. So if I mute the pitch stack, so let's mute that one as well. So this is the sound you're getting from just from operator 3. So operator 2 is the last operator. Now operators 1 and 2 have feedback. Let's yes, that sounds quite nice. Let's copy. What I should have done first is copied the settings from 5 to operator 2. Let's just make the tail a bit longer for that. Okay. Okay, so so what we need to do here is reduce the the velocity sensitivity a little bit. Okay, so we've used 4 mod slots, getting a bit of noise into the operator sounds here. We've got 2 mod slots left. Now we've used the LFO as a noise shape, so if we want to add a bit of randomness, what we can do is use the RNG, random number generator, and let's use that to affect the volume of operator 5. So we probably don't want it at 100% ratio because that would be quite extreme, as you can hear there. So we'll reduce the ratio, add a bit of offset. So now the output values 22, 15. So before the volume was 50. So we probably want a little bit more than that. Let's go offset 20, ratio 25. Let's do the same, just to add a bit of variety into the volume of the noise level. So we'll go here, create modulation, random number generator for, this is the tricky thing. Sometimes when you're setting the modulation destination, it's covered over some of the operators, you can't quite remember which operator's doing which, so I think it was 3 is the other carrier. Yeah. So again, that's too extreme with 0 offset and ratio 100%. We want to cut that down. So the volume was at 29. So I think as soon as you set a value in the modulation matrix, it overrides what you would have in the operator itself. So these values won't be added to the volume value in the operator, they replace it. So we've got no point fine-tuning the volume here because we've already overridden that with the modulation matrix. Okay, so we've got a 6 operator stack. We're using 4 operators to make the kind of pitch or the main pitch. And we've got another stack, 2 voices here just making a kind of noise sound. So that is voice 1. Now, what I would normally do is I'd name the voice there and save it. Well, actually, I wouldn't save it, but I'd name it there. So let's call this noisy pad. Level now. You see noisy pad has got an asterisk next to it, and the patch has got an asterisk next to it to indicate that there is unsaved information. I'm going to call this patch noisy pad as well. I mean, that's one thing about this performance patch voice layering. It does introduce a lot of flexibility, but it does mean that you end up naming a lot of different sounds the same thing. So we'll go to the performance level. You can see noisy pad. So if I saved this performance now, it would save everything below it. So it would save the patch noisy pad, and it would also save the voice noisy pad. Okay, welcome back everybody. My camera unfortunately stopped working momentarily, so I lost a bit of what I'd done, but let's start now from the performance level again. We finished the noisy pad channel 1. We're going to now make the kind of looping envelope sound on channel 2. So I'm going to unmute channel 2, look for a blank patch, which I've done by going into bank X. So we are now going to assign a blank voice to this patch. So let's go to edit. So here we can see we've got the initialized voice that you'll be familiar with from the first half of the video. So what we want to do is get some looping envelopes. So at the moment we've just got a standard organ envelope, so you can hear the MIDI notes are playing from the live too, and you can just hear that kind of drone sound. So let's get these envelopes looping. So what I'm going to do is delete segment actually going to make it linear. And now, the next time the sequence goes round and the note starts, we will get some looping for this envelope. So there you can see it started looping, and obviously we've got control over the length of each segment. And as you can hear, the loops will go well into audio rates. In fact, I got very excited when I was watching a video on the Nonlinear Labs C15 and the way that synth generated sound, to think that you could use these looping envelopes, and also the filter envelope will also loop at audio rates. So I thought theoretically if you could use those to get kind of physical modelling sounds. Now I haven't been able to do anything with that so far. I think it's probably a lack of experience on my part, but also I couldn't quite get the envelopes or the length of the envelopes to track the keyboard, which I think is what I need. I don't know if I'm missing a setting or something, but maybe I'll do a future video on that. Anyway, looking at these looping envelopes, so one thing that could be a problem is that each time the sequence goes round and it adds a looping envelope, you will add another voice, and so it gets a bit louder each time, and as you can hear, we've got these envelopes are looping and looping and looping and adding to each other. So I found the way to stop that happening is to go into the patch layer, make this voice part of an exclusion group 1. Now that means, and put hard cut on exclusion, so each time a new instance of this voice starts, it will cut out the one that was playing before, so we won't get the kind of building and building effect. So I'm going to click MIDI panic just to go back to get a single instance of the looping envelopes running. So go back into edit. Now what we can do is add another segment using this add button here, and here we're on segment 4. You see the purple looping option. I'll add that. So now we've got two looping sections. Okay, great. So I'm going to add another operator. Copy and paste the settings into here. So we've now got two looping operators, which should start looping once it comes around again on the sequence. And I can adjust the loop of this operator so operator 1 and 5 are slightly out of phase with each other. So at the moment they're perfectly in phase. So I've added modulators now. I've done that the wrong way around. Let's use the looping envelopes from operator 1 for operator 6 and the ones from operator 5 for operator 4. So there's a bit of phasing going on now. And let's effect a bit less extreme. So now we've got 4 operators. So I've added operator 2 and operator 3 to the top of the stack, which will affect the timbre further. Although these operators, they just got the standard organ envelopes. Has feedback, so I'm just changing the feedback level to see the difference that makes to the timbre. Changing the ratio. Okay. What else can we do? Let's use an LFO to modulate the volume of the patch. That's quite nice. It's modulating the panning actually, so let's slow that down a bit. That LFO modulating the panning of the voice in the stereo field. So now I'm also using the LFO to modulate the volume of the so I'm going to adjust the offset so it doesn't fade away completely. Now you might notice something odd there. So operators 2 and 3 aren't always playing, and that's because I've got a probability setting on the voices in the sequencer, so the voices aren't always playing, but of course the looping envelopes carry on looping regardless. It's just operators 2 and 3 which have the organ envelopes which will stop when the voice on the MPC cuts out. So what we could do is make these envelopes loop. So you see when I clicked on segment 3 and loop, it's just looping the release portion from 2 till 3. Let's take sustain off and if I've clicked on segment 1, say is that this hierarchy of performance, patch and voice gives quite a lot of flexibility and it's very useful, but it does mean that I tend to end up naming patches and voices the same thing and doing quite a lot of that arrangement. Now, if we go up to the performance level, you'll see now Noisy Pad has the asterisk next to it, Blips has an asterisk next to it, so I need to save the performance in order to save all those changes that I've made. The only thing left to do maybe is just to put a bit of effects on the sound. So by default you have two effect sends. We've got reverb and chorus. I think they both sound great. I mean, you've got more options for reverb. I think reverb 7, which is space, sounds great. And same for chorus. You've got settings you can adjust in the chorus, but let's just try adding a bit of reverb. That's going to make both voices louder, so I'm just going to turn it down a bit. I'll add the chorus as well. Okay. Hopefully that was interesting, and I quite enjoy playing with the EssenceFM in this way and just coming up with sounds. I think there's quite a lot of potential for generative sounds using some of these techniques, so maybe that'll be something I'll explore in a future video. But for now, I'll say goodbye. Thanks very much for watching, and if you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on a future video. Thank you very much. Goodbye.